Welcome everyone. I'm really excited to deliver today's topic with you for this week, which has been one of my absolute favourites since Flourish started. So some of you may remember it from last year, and it's a topic that is really important because the food industry is based on putting triggers in our environment that cause us to make unhealthy decisions. So get ready to arm yourselves against those triggers as we discuss this week's topic. So we're going to talk about trigger foods and what happens when we eat them and why we actually react the way that we do. So here's an explanation of how certain foods can trigger overeating through their effect on our brain chemistry and hunger signals. So I want you to try and think of your brain's reward system like a thermostat. But instead of it regulating temperature, it actually regulates pleasure and satisfaction. Now, natural whole foods typically keep this in balance. However, when you eat processed foods, they can actually hack this system in a few different ways, and I'd like to go through those with you now. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is the dopamine effect. So highly processed foods can trigger dopamine release up to 10 times greater than any natural food ever could. So I want you to think of it like turning up your car radio. Natural foods will play at a volume while processed foods blast at full volume. So over time, loud noise, you'll find that you'll need to turn it up louder and louder to get the same buzz and the same satisfaction. And that's why when you eat one cookie, it doesn't satisfy you, but leaves you wanting and craving to eat more and more of them. The next one we'll talk about is the blood sugar roller coaster, which I'm sure many of you have been through or will understand what I'm talking about. So refined sugars are like rocket fuel. They are very quick to rise and they're very quick to crash. And this crash is what actually starts to trigger urgent hunger signals and those cravings. So basically, the more you have, the more that you want. And your body learns to crave these quick energy foods, which is very different to, say, complex carbohydrates like a sweet potato. So, that releases energy really slowly and steadily. So you're not going to eat a sweet potato and then think, oh my gosh, I've got to have more sweet potato. You may like to have another one because it tasted nice, but you don't have that real desire and craving where you just can't stop yourself. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is a very dangerous one, and it's the fat and sugar combination. So processed foods often combine fats and sugars in ratios that are very rarely found in nature. So this combination particularly lights up our brain's reward center. So for example, you might eat a whole packet of cookies, which is high fat and high sugar, but you'd struggle to eat a whole lot of apples in a row, which is just the sugar, or blocks of fat, or blocks of butter, which is just fat. And I remember seeing a fantastic documentary by Dr. Michael Mosley, where they actually took some rats and they put them into 3 groups, test rats. And the first group, they just gave them sugar and let them eat as much as they wanted to, as often as they wanted to. And the next group, they just gave them pure fat. And again, it was available to them whenever they wanted to. And then the last group, they actually gave them a combination of fat and sugar. And again, they allowed them to eat whatever they wanted. And after a 3-month period, the results were actually quite impressive. The group that could eat as much sugar as they wanted put on a little bit of weight. The group that could eat as much fat as it wanted put on a little bit of weight. But the group that could eat as much fat and sugar combined as it wanted put on more than double their amount of weight. And that is just to show you how addictive it is when you combine those two together, and how, if you think about a lot of the foods that you crave, they will always be quite high in sugar and in fat together to give you that real craving that we can't quite get our head around. So there is one more trigger, and that is a texture effect. So many processed foods are designed to have a specific mouth feel that triggers something called a vanishing caloric density. This is a real thing. And I want you to think of foods that melt in your mouth. So they trick your brain into thinking that you're not eating as much as you are, So things like an ice cream, we're not actually chewing and eating, but it just feels like it kind of dissolves, or when you're having chocolate that you just let melt in your mouth. It allows you to think that you're not actually eating anything, and so it's very easy to go back and have more and more of this. So they're the 4 main ones, and it's interesting knowledge, I know, but it's what we do with the knowledge that's probably most important to us. So what are we going to do with it? So here's a few ideas. First of all, I want you to identify what your top 3 trigger foods are and write them down. So really sit down and think about not just foods you like, but foods that you know once you start eating, you have a really hard time stopping them. You know, for me, if I have to be, and the more specific you are, the better. If I have to be really specific for me, if I have any Cadbury chocolate that's from a block and I just take off a row and eat it, I would find it very hard to stop and not want to go back for more and more. So that's one of my really big trigger foods. The other trigger foods is cashews. Now, it's not something I have often, but I know if they come out and I start eating them, again, I find it really, really difficult not to keep eating them and eating them. And the other one that I find really hard is a really bizarre one, but it's sweets like, like baklava, for example. Like if I have a piece of that, I can't stop thinking about it until I have another piece or a piece after. Luckily, it's not the thing that I eat often. But if I have to really think about what are my triggers where it's insatiable appetite, that's what I want you to think about. So when you've thought of 3, I want you to write them down. And the idea is to then come up with some really good alternatives which you still enjoy, but don't cause the same loss of control. So the important thing here, I guess, is to remember that you don't need to stop eating them. You just need to swap them out for something a little bit better. So for me, for example, if I'm going to replace chocolate, it has to be with chocolate. But I find if I have really dark chocolate, which I do love as well, I would have a few pieces and not feel like I need to go back, because obviously it's not quite as high as sugar. And so it isn't something that makes me want to go back over and over. With nuts, I guess for me, things like pistachios, I love them, but I'm not out of control with them. So they were a great alternative to cashews for me. And in terms of my sweets, I have to really think about that one. I guess there are some sweets which I really enjoy that don't make me want to go back and have more. So if I had like some kind of cake that was maybe iced, I might have a slice of it, but it's not the sort of thing that I would want to go back and have more and more. So if I had like a cupcake, for example, it's not the sort of food that I would want to go back to and keep thinking about eating. And it's very personal. So I guess the important thing here also is to think about what your trigger foods are and find alternatives for them that give you that same kind of, satisfaction without them being something that you find out of control with. So I think it's really important to actually remember that as well. And sometimes it's a bit of trial and error, finding things that you like that kind of hit the spot, because as you all know, there are times when you'll try and find an alternative, but it's not good enough and you'll end up eating the thing that you were going to eat in the first place. So a bit of trial and error to find what actually works for you, but I think it's a really important thing to remember. I also do have, as usual, our meditation. So if you are wanting to, you could pause it now, go lay down, go sit down, and then obviously you could listen to that to have this week's meditation. So we'll have that now. So you can pause and then you can just restart this when you're ready. Begin by finding a comfy position and rest your hands gently on your lap or on your belly. And let's take a deep breath in through your nose and let it out slowly through your mouth. Allow your shoulders to soften and drop. Release any tension in your jaw and feel your facial muscles relaxing. With each breath, allow yourself to sink a little deeper into your chair. Notice the rise and fall of your chest, the gentle movement of your belly as you breathe. just leaves floating past. No need to grab them or push them away, just watching them pass by. Imagine yourself now moving through your day, making choices that align with your values of self-care and well-being. See yourself pausing before eating, taking a moment to check in with your body. Do I really need this? Visualize yourself choosing foods that truly nourish you. Perhaps you're replacing a processed snack with fresh fruit and nuts, or taking time to prepare a colourful, nutritious meal. Notice how these choices make your body feel. Feel the sense of pride that comes with caring for yourself in this way. Not because you should, but because you're choosing to honour your health, your well-being, and your values. Remember a moment when you made a nurturing food choice. Hold on to that feeling of accomplishment, knowing you're treating your body with kindness and respect. Carry this feeling with you as you slowly bring your awareness back to the room, to the chair supporting you, and to your breath. And know you can return to this feeling of empowered choice whenever you need to. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. And next week in our workshops, we are talking about water. There is so much more to it than what I knew, so I decided that it warrants a whole meeting on it. And I really look forward to seeing you all then, and I hope you all have a really fabulous long weekend. Take care.